Hi everyone, today might shift something inside you because I want to talk about a secret that alchemists have protected for centuries. The fact that your greatest financial struggle is actually the same thing as your greatest wealth. It sounds contradictory, doesn't it? But the fourth Hermetic Law, the law of polarity, tells us that everything is dual, everything has poles, everything has its pair of opposites. In this reality, wealth and poverty are not two different things. They are simply two ends of the same vibrational scale. Just as hot and cold are merely different degrees of temperature, your current lack of money is simply the negative pole of the very abundance you are seeking. In this video, we are going to explore how to use the alchemy of opposites to transform your reality. By integrating the ancient wisdom of the Kybalion with Dr. Joe Dispenza's work on neuroplasticity, I will show you how to slide your consciousness from the pole of lack to the pole of prosperity. Most people spend their lives fighting against the negative pole, not realizing that by focusing on it, they are actually anchoring themselves there. I've had to learn in my own journey that you don't destroy the dark, you simply turn up the light. We will dive into the science of how your brain's polarity dictates your magnetic pull and how you can start transmuting your perceived failures into the golden frequency of success. It is time to stop being a victim of circumstance and become the master of the slider. If you are ready to stop fighting your reality and start transmuting it, please subscribe to the channel. We are breaking down the 7 Hermetic laws to give you the tools for a complete biological and financial upgrade. Your support helps this message reach more people who are ready to wake up. Hit the bell and join our journey. To master the art of mental alchemy, you must study the source code. I have placed the links for the Kybalion and Dr. Joe Dispenza's essential works in the first pinned comment below. Owning these books is a physical act of polarity. It is a commitment to moving your mind toward the pole of mastery. 1. The spectrum of reality. Same thing, different degree. The true mastery of reality begins when you stop seeing the world in black and white and start seeing it as a series of sliding scales. The fourth Hermetic Law, the law of polarity, is perhaps the most misunderstood and yet the most practical tool for financial transformation. It states that everything is dual, everything has poles, everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. To the average person living in a three-dimensional Newtonian world, poverty and wealth seem like two completely different entities, two different destinies, or two different things that happen to people. But to the student of Hermeticism and the practitioner of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, poverty and wealth are recognized as the same thing. They are simply different degrees on the vibrational scale of abundance. Think about the concept of temperature. We use the words hot and cold as if they were two separate things in a constant war with each other. But if you look at a thermometer, where does hot end and cold begin? There is no point where one stops and the other starts. They are merely names we give to the varying degrees of the vibration of atoms. Cold is simply the absence of heat. It is heat at a very low rate of vibration. The law of polarity reveals that this same principle applies to everything in the universe, including your bank account. Poverty is not a thing that you must escape or fight. It is simply the negative pole of wealth. It is wealth vibrating at a very low, dense, and restricted frequency. This realization is the foundation of mental alchemy. If they are the same thing, then you do not need to find wealth in the outside world, you only need to change the degree of your internal vibration to slide toward the positive pole. This is where Dr. Joe Dispenza's work is essential. In the quantum model, every possibility already exists in the now. There is a version of you that is bankrupt and a version of you that is a billionaire. These are not two different people, they are two different polarities of the same consciousness. Most people are stuck at the negative pole because their nervous system has been conditioned to resonate with the frequency of lack. This conditioning creates a vibrational anchor that keeps them fixed at one end of the scale. When you understand the law of polarity, you realize that you don't have to create wealth out of nothing. You are simply taking the energy that is currently being expressed as lack and transmuting its frequency until it expresses itself as abundance. You are changing the degree, not the substance. The tragedy of the modern mindset is the belief that to get more of something, you must fight against its opposite. We fight poverty, we fight disease, we fight failure. But the law of polarity teaches that opposites are identical in nature. When you fight poverty, you are staying on the same scale, but you are focusing all your attention and emotional energy on the negative pole. Since where your attention goes, your energy flows, you are actually feeding the vibration of lack with your resistance. You are keeping the atoms of your reality vibrating at that slow, dense rate. To slide the slider, you must stop recognizing poverty as an enemy and start seeing it as a low-degree expression of wealth. This shift in perception is the internal pivot. You stop trying to get rid of the cold and you start focusing on generating heat. In my journey, I have found that the biggest obstacle to this shift is the analytical mind. The analytical mind loves to categorize and separate. It tells you, I have $50 in my bank account and I need $5,000. These are two different realities. But from a polarity standpoint, they are the same reality at different stages of manifestation. If you have 1 cent, you have wealth. It is just wealth at a very low degree. By acknowledging that 1 cent as the seed of the positive pole, you begin to change your electromagnetic signature. You are no longer in a state of not having, you are in a state of having at a lower degree. This subtle shift in the frontal lobe changes the way you perceive opportunity. Instead of seeing a wall, you begin to see the gradient. You begin to see the steps that allow you to slide toward the other end of the spectrum. This is also connected to the principle of paradox. In Hermeticism, all truths are but half-truths, and every paradox may be reconciled. The paradox of wealth is that you must feel wealthy before the wealth appears. This is only possible because of the law of polarity. Since wealth and poverty are the same thing, you can reach into the frequency of poverty and find the potential for wealth hidden within it. You are not lying to yourself. You are simply choosing to focus on the other side of the coin. Dr. Joe Dispenza's medications are designed to help you find that 0 point where the poles meet. In the silence of the quantum void, you are no longer defined by your past, the negative pole. You are pure consciousness. And as pure consciousness, you have the power to polarize your energy in any direction you choose. We must also look at the biology of polarity. Our bodies are polarized systems. We have a positive and negative charge in every cell, and our hearts and brains function as an electromagnetic dipoles. When you are in a state of survival, fear, anger, or stress, you are polarized toward the contraction end of the scale. Your energy is being pulled inward to protect the self. When you are in a state of creation, love, gratitude, or abundance, you are polarized toward expansion. You cannot be in both states at once. You are either sliding toward the pole of creation or the pole of survival. Most people's lives are a constant, erratic jumping between these poles, which creates an incoherent field. The goal of the master is to achieve polar stability, the ability to keep the internal slider fixed on the positive pole regardless of what the external thermometer of reality is showing. This stability is achieved through vibrational transmutation. The Kybalion tells us that mind, as well as metals and elements, may be transmuted from state to state, degree to degree, condition to condition, pole to pole, vibration to vibration. This is the highest form of mental alchemy. It means that if you are feeling a deep sense of financial fear, you don't need to get rid of the fear. Fear is just the negative pole of courage and certainty. You take the energy of that fear, the raw, high arousal energy, and you repolarize it. You use that same intensity to fuel your vision of success. You change the quality of the vibration, not the energy itself. This is why many of the most successful people in history came from extreme poverty.
They didn't have different energy than others. They simply learned how to take the intense energy of their negative circumstances and polarize it with such force that they swung all the way to the other end of the scale.
To master the spectrum of reality, you must also understand the law of non-resistance. If you hate your current financial situation, you are locked to that pole. Hate is a powerful binding force. It keeps your frequency synchronized with the very thing you want to escape. The only way to release the anchor is to move into a state of equanimity. You look at your bank account and you say, "This is simply wealth at a low degree. It is part of the same scale as my billions." By removing the emotional charge of bad from the negative pole, you lose your attachment to it. You are now free to move. This is the quantum detachment that Dr. Joe emphasizes. When you stop being somebody experiencing something called poverty, you become nobody in nowhere with the power to become anything. As we move forward in this study, you must begin to see every negative in your life as a pointer to its positive opposite. A debt is just the shadow of a future credit. An obstacle is just the polarized potential of a breakthrough. The law of polarity ensures that the positive pole is always there, hidden within the negative. Your job is not to create it, but to observe it into existence. By shifting your observation from the degree of not enough to the degree of more than enough, you begin to change the very structure of your reality. You are no longer a victim of the scale. You are the one who holds the slider. You are the alchemist, and the lead of your current life is ready to be turned into gold.
2. Neuroplasticity and the polar shift. Rewiring the poles. To understand how to slide from the negative pole of scarcity to the positive pole of wealth, we must examine the biological hardware that keeps us stuck, the human brain. The law of polarity is not just a philosophical concept, it is mirrored in our neural circuitry. Every time you think a thought or feel an emotion, you are reinforcing a specific synaptic connection. Dr. Joe Dispenza famously states that nerve cells that fire together wire together. If you have spent years focusing on the negative pole, worrying about bills, feeling unworthy of luxury, or fearing financial collapse, you have physically polarized your brain into a state of lack. You have built a neurological highway that leads directly to the frequency of poverty. This is why it feels so difficult to think positive. Your brain is physically biased toward the negative end of the spectrum. This biological bias is known as Hebbian learning, but in the context of the law of polarity, we can call it vibrational fixation. Your brain has become an automated record of the past, and that past is polarized towards survival. When you try to manifest wealth while your brain is wired for lack, you are experiencing a polar conflict. Your conscious mind wants the positive pole, but your subconscious mind and your body are chemically addicted to the negative pole. This is because the emotions of the negative pole, stress, anxiety, and frustration, produce a high-octane chemical cocktail of cortisol and adrenaline. The body becomes addicted to these survival chemicals, and it will subconsciously steer you toward negative financial situations just to get its next chemical fix. You are trapped in a self-perpetuating loop of negative polarity. To break this loop, we must use neuroplasticity to perform a polar shift. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. It is the physical mechanism of mental alchemy. When you begin to consciously redirect your attention from the pole of lack to the pole of wealth, you are not just changing your mind, you are performing surgery on your own brain. You are beginning to weaken the old connections to the negative pole through a process called long-term depression, or LTD, the weakening of synapses due to disuse. Simultaneously, you are strengthening the connections to the positive pole through long-term potentiation, or LTP. This is how you physically move the slider in your own biology. Dr. Joe Dispenza's work emphasizes that this shift must happen in the frontal lobe of the brain. The frontal lobe has the power to observe the rest of the brain's activity. When you catch yourself sliding toward the negative pole of financial fear, your frontal lobe can step in and say, "This is not the reality I am choosing." This act of metacognition is the first step in depolarizing the old network. By refusing to give the negative thought an emotional charge, you stop the chemical flow of stress. You are effectively starving the negative pole. Then, through intentional visualization and elevated emotion, you begin to fire the circuits of the positive pole. You begin to rehearse the feeling of wealth so intensely that the brain cannot distinguish between the internal rehearsal and the external reality.
This is the science of epigenetics applied to polarity. When you consistently polarize your mind toward abundance, you are signaling new genes in new ways. You are changing the very expression of your DNA to match a person who is wealthy. You are no longer the person in debt. You are a new identity vibrating at the positive end of the scale. The law of polarity ensures that as your internal biological poles shift, your external environmental poles must follow. But this requires neurological consistency. You cannot wire a new brain for wealth if you only spend 10 minutes a day in meditation and the other 23 hours reinforcing the old circuits of lack. You must become a polarity guard, vigilantly protecting the frequency of your mind. One of the most powerful tools in this shift is the reframing of the synapse. In the law of polarity, every problem is just the negative pole of a solution. When a financial challenge arises, instead of allowing your brain to fire the old panic circuit, you must consciously force it to fire the possibility circuit. You ask yourself, what is the positive pole of this situation? By asking a new question, you are forcing your brain to search for new connections. You are moving the energy from the amygdala, the seat of fear and the negative pole, to the prefrontal cortex, the seat of logic, creativity, and the positive pole. This is a literal polar shift in the blood flow of your brain. We must also understand the role of the autonomic nervous system in maintaining polarity. The sympathetic nervous system is the pole of action and survival, while the parasympathetic nervous system is the pole of rest and creation. Most people are stuck in a state of chronic sympathetic dominance. They are constantly on, constantly stressed, and constantly polarized toward the external world of threats. To slide toward the pole of wealth, you must learn to activate the parasympathetic system. Wealth is a frequency of receptivity. You cannot receive the abundance of the quantum field if you are in a state of defense. By using breathwork to enter a state of heart-brain coherence, you are shifting your biological polarity from protection to growth. The expert narrator knows that this shift is often accompanied by biological resistance. As you begin to wire for the positive pole, your body, which has been addicted to the chemicals of the negative pole for decades, will go into withdrawal. It will send messages to the brain to make you feel uncomfortable, doubtful, or even physically ill. It wants its cortisol. It wants the familiar pole of lack because it feels safe, even if it is painful. This is the dark night of the soul in the manifestation process. It is simply the body's old polarity trying to drag the mind back down. If you understand the law of polarity, you recognize this resistance as a sign that the shift is happening. You don't retreat, you double down on the positive pole. This process eventually leads to pruning. The brain literally prunes away the dead wood of the old negative polarized networks. They wither away from lack of attention. Meanwhile, the new networks of wealth and sovereignty become thick, myelinated highways. Eventually, the positive pole becomes your new default mode network. Abundance becomes your natural state of being. You no longer have to try to feel wealthy, you simply are. You have successfully transmuted the lead of your old conditioning into the gold of a new neurological identity. You have moved the slider, and the universe, acting as the perfect mirror, now has no choice but to reflect the new, high-degree version of you. In my experience, the moment you realize that your brain is just a polarity machine is the moment you become free. You realize that you were never broken or unlucky. You were just poorly programmed. You were vibrating at the low end of a scale that you have the power to control.
By mastering the neuroplasticity of the polar shift, you are taking the reins of your evolution. You are deciding with every thought and every breath which pole of reality you are going to inhabit. The scale is yours, the slider is in your hand, and the frequency of wealth is waiting for you to simply choose it, wire it, and become it.
3. The alchemy of perspective, turning lead into gold. The true test of a master is not how they behave when things are going well, but how they handle the negative pull when it appears. In mental alchemy, we do not see a financial setback as a bad event, but as raw energy that is currently polarized in the wrong direction. Your perspective is the alchemical agent that has the power to change the degree of any situation instantly. When you encounter a loss, the natural human reaction is to collapse into the frequency of the event, reinforcing its negative polarity. However, according to the law of polarity, that loss contains within it the exact same amount of energy as a potential gain. It is like a battery. It has a negative terminal and a positive terminal, but the power comes from the tension between the two. The alchemy of perspective is the ability to extract the power from the negative and redirect it to the positive. Dr. Joe Dispenza teaches that when we react emotionally to an external event, we are giving our power away to that event. If a bill or a failed investment causes you to spiral into fear, you have let the below dictate the above. You have become a victim of the negative pole. To transmute this, you must enter a state of quantum observation, where you look at the event without the old emotional charge. By removing the judgment of "this is bad," you neutralize the negative pole. Once the energy is neutralized, it becomes malleable. You can then consciously repolarize that energy by asking, what is the equivalent positive potential here? This is not positive thinking. It is the technical redistribution of psychic and electromagnetic energy. I have found that the most successful creators use their failures as a slingshot. The further you are pulled back into the negative pole, the more tension you have to propel yourself into the positive. This is the elasticity of polarity. If you can maintain your internal frequency while in a low situation, you create a massive vibrational differential. This differential is what causes a quantum collapse of a new reality. The universe seeks equilibrium, and if you are internally vibrating at wealth while your external is poverty, the vacuum must be filled. The law of polarity ensures that the swing to the positive will be equal to the depth of the negative you encountered. But this only works if you do not identify with the negative pole. In my experience as an expert narrator, this is where the middle way becomes essential. You acknowledge the physical reality of the negative pole without letting it penetrate your inner sanctuary. You see the lead, the current struggle, but your mind is already seeing the gold, the lesson, and the reversal. This dual awareness is the hallmark of the alchemist. We must also understand the law of non-resistance in relation to polarity. When you resist the negative pole, you are effectively pushing against it, which only serves to keep it in place. Resistance is a form of attention, and attention is energy. To transmute a situation, you must agree with thine adversary quickly, as the ancient text says. By agreeing, you are not accepting defeat. You are acknowledging the current degree of the scale. Once you stop fighting the pole, you are no longer locked to it. You are now free to slide the slider toward the opposite end. This is how you turn a debt into a motivation and a rejection into a redirection. Every billionaire has a story of a negative pole that nearly destroyed them. The difference between them and those who failed is simply how they polarized the event. They used the intensity of the struggle to fire their neurons toward a new solution. They transmuted the lead of their circumstances into the gold of their legacy through the power of perspective. Remember, the pole you observe is the pole that grows. If you look for the lack, the law of polarity will provide infinite shades of lack. If you look for the seed of wealth within the lack, you begin the process of growth.
You are the observer who determines where the wave function of your life will collapse. As we move into the final integration of this law, start practicing this polar flip daily. Small inconveniences are perfect training grounds for large financial shifts. The moment you feel a negative pole, stop, breathe, and consciously find the opposite pole. This is how you build the vibrational muscle to command your destiny.
4. The master of the slider, the expert perspective. To become a master of the slider, you must reach a level of psychological and energetic maturity where the external world no longer dictates your internal state. This is the pinnacle of the middle way I have integrated, the ability to exist between the poles while consciously choosing the one you inhabit. Most people are like leaves in the wind, being blown from the pole of joy to the pole of despair based on their bank balance. A master, however, understands that the slider is an internal mechanism, not an external one, and its calibration requires absolute discipline. One of the most profound challenges in this practice is navigating what I call the vibrational void, or the lag time. When you move your internal slider from the pole of lack to the pole of wealth, the physical world does not respond instantly because matter is dense. There is a period of time where your above, your mind, is at the positive pole, but your below, your bank account, is still reflecting the old negative pole. This is the great filter of manifestation, where most people fail because they look at the mirror, see the old reflection, and immediately repolarize to fear. To bridge this gap, you must understand the physics of the vacuum. In quantum mechanics, the vacuum is not empty. It is a field of infinite potentiality that reacts to the observer's stability. If you fluctuate between poles during the lag time, you create a blurred wave function that cannot crystallize into a solid physical reality. The master remains polarized in advance, meaning they live in the emotion of the result before the result has physically appeared. This is not a psychological trick, it is a biological command to the quantum field to reorganize the atoms of your life. This requires a total override of the HPA axis, or the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. When the external world shows you a negative pole, like a debt or a failure, your body naturally wants to trigger a stress response. This stress response is a low-frequency biological state that automatically anchors you to the negative pole of survival. By using heart-brain coherence, you inhibit the release of cortisol and instead flood your system with DHEA and oxytocin. You are effectively using your biochemistry to force lock your slider on the positive pole, regardless of the environmental noise. I have found in my research that the reticulating activating system, the RAS, acts as the gatekeeper of this polar shift. The RAS is a network of neurons in the brainstem that filters the 2 million bits of data hitting your senses every second. When you are polarized to lack, your RAS only lets in information that confirms that lack: bills, bad news, and obstacles. But when you master the slider and fix it on abundance, your RAS begins to highlight the gold that was previously invisible. You start seeing the connection, the investment opportunity, or the creative solution that was always there, hidden in the opposite pole. This is the secret of the wealth aura, a field so polarized toward prosperity that it creates a magnetic vacuum. In physics, nature abhors a vacuum, and the same is true in the law of polarity. If your internal state is consistently polarized to millions while your external is zero, you have created a massive vibrational differential. The universe must rush to fill that void to restore equilibrium, often resulting in sudden or miraculous financial breakthroughs. But this only happens if you do not identify with the temporary negative pole of the external world. The expert narrator knows that you must also deal with polar resistance from your social environment. When you begin to shift your polarity, those around you who are still stuck in the negative pole will unconsciously try to pull you back.
They will offer realistic advice, share their fears, and project their scarcity onto you. This is a test of your vibrational sovereignty. You must be the dominant frequency, staying so coherent in your positive pole that you eventually entrain them to your level, rather than vice versa.
Becoming the master of the slider also means understanding the law of non-resistance in a deep technical way. Resistance is a form of fixation on the negative pole. The more you hate your current situation, the more you are energetically glued to it. To slide to the positive, you must first neutralize the negative by accepting its existence as a simple degree on the scale. By removing the emotional charge of good or bad, you free up the energy required to make the jump to the opposite end. You're not ignoring reality, you are simply refusing to give it the power to polarize you. The ultimate goal of this alchemical work is to reach a state of polar integration. This is where you realize that both poles are necessary for the game of life, but you are the one holding the controller. You use the tension of the negative to propel you into the positive, like a bow pulling an arrow back to fire it forward. Every no becomes a yes in another degree. Every loss is just the shadow of a future gain. When you reach this level of mastery, you are no longer a victim of the laws. You are the embodiment of the laws in action. You are the composer of your own symphony, the pilot of your own frequency, and the architect of your own polarity. The slider is in your hands, and it has always been there, waiting for you to stop reacting and start creating. As you walk through your day, remember that every moment is a choice of degree. The future is not a destination, it is a pole you choose to inhabit right now, in the present moment of your own consciousness. Choose the gold, wire the gold, and eventually you will hold the gold. If you are ready to master your internal slider and finally align your biology with the laws of the universe, please subscribe to the channel. We are diving deeper than any other platform to ensure your transformation is backed by both ancient wisdom and modern science. Join our community of high-frequency creators and help us build this legacy by hitting the notification bell. Mastering the law of polarity requires constant immersion in the frequency of the masters. I have placed the links for the Kybalion and Dr. Joe Dispenza's essential works in the first pinned comment below. These are the technical manuals for your mental alchemy. Owning them is your first step towards shifting your polarity for good. The next time you face a challenge, I want you to stop and ask, what is the positive pole of this moment? Share your polar flip in the comments below. Let's use our collective energy to transmute the scarcity of the world into abundance. Thank you for your time and your attention, and I will see you in video 6, where we will explore the law of rhythm and how to master the tides of life.